knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Volta, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. And at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, son or daughter of noble family trained who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita. Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said, Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no cessation. There is no increase, no purity. There is no decrease, no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times, by means of Prajnaparamita, fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way, Te ata om gate gate paragate parasangate bodhisoha. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. The Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its humans, asuras, and gandharvas rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Chandara Samaraya Mente Ata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Buddhiso Baba Conchu Sanji Gae Nembe Doji She Roba Doji Mega Doji Shewa Doji Ragi Baji Medum Bishu Donji Shelingar Yezo Ngiri Nunya Yeyo Yewala Medo Nume Na Nevada Lumba Runjim Bun Sun Sun Joji Naji Le Yan Na Le Yo. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jewel mandala to you, precious Guru. Edam Guru Ratnamandalagam Niradayami. Jadan Zadi Janam La Janju Madhu Dani Yazuji Nagi Jini Jibezonam Nrola Menji Zanye Rubayo Yadan Zadi Janam La Yanju Badu Dani Yazuji Nagi Jini Jibezonam Nrola Menji Zanye Rubayo Jadan Zadi Janam La Yanju Badu Nani Yazuji Nagi Jini Jibezonam Nrola Menji Zanye Rubayo.
What was in the land of Jiba Dambagun, Roma to the Batala, and just our Shane to the ten Lucida Janabani, Shane to stand the Lucida Janabatala, Tayutan Jibelan Jiku and Jibelan Sumurba, Jibelan Sumurtala, Chongo the Tongo Large Revolution with Sudan, Lead the Tongo Revolution with Chibi Large Revolution with Sonche, Chongo the Tongo Large Revolution with Sudala, Samba Jamango, Samba the Chips, Telalutus was. Ta Samba Jamango, the Jidin Shema, the Nijulochi, but the Jidin Shema, the third them, but the lot, I joined to the lady in the Marba, joined to the lady in Nije, Ta joined to the la, Joseph, Large Jimarba, or Danga to the Joseph took up the letter. What did you do?
So When we look at the outline of the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment by Lama Tsong-kha-pa, that is commenting on Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment, we find the various categories. And in the beginning, there are 4 points in an outline, and the last point is how to training students in the actual instructions, or training in the instructions. So, how to lead students to the stages of the actual instruction. So it begins with how to rely upon a teacher, that is a root of the path, and then the next section is the stages of practice once one has relied upon that teacher. And under that section of the stages of practice of once one has relied upon the teacher, we find an exhortation to take full advantage of a life of leisure and opportunity, and then the actual way to take advantage of a life of leisure and opportunity. And when we get into the way to take advantage of a life of leisure and opportunity, we get into the different categories of training the mind in the stages of the past shared in common with beings of small capacity, training the mind in the stages of the past shared in common with beings of medium capacity, and training the mind in the stages of the past shared in common with beings of great capacity. So now we're currently dealing under the section heading training the mind in the stages of the past shared in common with beings of small capacity, and that begins with an outline format of three points or 3 categories of instruction. Developing the actual thought of a person of small capacity, the measure of that thought of person of small capacity, and then dispelling any misconceptions related to a person of small capacity. So then when we get to that first point, the actual training of a thought of a person of small capacity, there are 2 categories. Developing a state of mind that strives diligently for the sake of future lives, and then the second point, the reliance upon a means, or the reliance upon a method of achieving happiness in one's next life. So we've gone through those categories up to the reliance on the means, or the reliance on method for achieving happiness in one's next life. And that section then begins with 2 major categories. The first major category being refuge, the training in refuge, the excellent gateway into the instruction. And then the second point that's made, developing a faith and conviction in karma and its results. So those are the 2 categories. And we're currently now dealing with the first category of refuge. So when we look at the section on refuge, it's broken down into 4 categories initially, and then broken down into more and more and more categories. But initially, refuge is broken down into 4 major points. First, the causes for going for refuge. Second, based on that, the objects to which you go for refuge. The third is the refuge through commitment. And then the fourth is the precepts, or the precepts of commitment. So that's the section that we're currently dealing with. The third point is the way you go for refuge. After based on that, the objects of which you go for refuge, it's the way you go for refuge, and then the pledges or commitments. So that's the section that we're currently dealing with. And so now we are under the section, the way you go for refuge. The chepa drup nama.
Chaba the Chinese chaba, Chenyi Cheba, Mabi Cheba, Ruby Cheba, Jesu Ruby Cheba, then the Gare, Sona Pi Cheba, then what did you do, Marba?
That's I like Keelan. Rasa.
Yeah.
Okay, so then when we get into the section on refuge, and we get to the specific point of a way you go for refuge, we find that there are 4 points. Going for refuge by knowing the excellent qualities, going for refuge by knowing the distinctions or the differences, going for refuge by way of commitment, and going for refuge by way of not acknowledging any others' refuges. So those are the 4 points. So we've already gone over that first category of going for refuge by knowing the excellent qualities. The excellent qualities of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and we went through the excellent qualities of the Buddha's body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. So we've covered much of that material already in the various excellent qualities. And then the next section that deals with the various distinctions and so forth, we find that there are 6 distinctions that are made and points that are made. So these distinctions are the distinctions based on definition, distinctions based on enlightened activities, distinctions based on devotion, distinctions based on practice, distinction based on recollection, and in distinctions based on the increase of merit. So these are the 6 categories of the different distinctions that we've gone over that differentiate the 3 jewels from one another. So we've gone over these distinctions or differences. So now we are currently dealing with going for refuge through commitment, or through another way you could define it is through assertion, kelen, to assert. So it's, and I'm asserting this, I'm committing to this, so I'm going for refuge through this assertion. So now we're on page 189 in English, top of page 142 in Jadan Jichinit. 189, right at the top.
What the Chebashi Kilambu Johnson Road. Kilambu Johnson Road, Johnson Swanes, Sanji Jotumba Budan, Chu Nyande, Jomundan, Ganu, Jodubinda Rus, doing out to say that the Rendoa. Kilambu Johnson Road, the Kilambu Johnson Road, Sanji Jotumba Boje. That Dendru Landan, Tabi Landan, Sanji Kumun to be land to Sukingalo, and Sanji Matu, and the young legend. Dendruljeya, Tabatoya, Sanjia, what the Guru Mato, Sanji Matuma Ina, and what thing also Dendruljeya, Tabatoya, Sanjia, doing Majorota, Tiji, Taute, and the Matu and Sanji, members and Davaris, Jotumbo, members and Davaji, Lesser. That Joe, the Nyandis of Nyandis and Tachukunju, Chokujulang Guden, the Ladeni Ganane, Nyandis and Guden. Guden the Chongje Guden that you did the city car on Pompe, Kachat and Jilang Guden Marbe, Tonlan is on there, and the Tonlan Nandulan is on the 2 or Marbe, and Ponja Union Pompe Guden, then the more Pompe. Ta and the Sanji Menebinande, Nemo but the sheet of Malibu Pompe Guden, what they but Yande Chungo dancer. Gandu. Jodubinda Rus, Taganu, da Kashura, Jodubinda Ru, Dendru Landa, Tabi Landa, Saju want to be Lantuso, Nale Jebala Tuko, Chudugo, Chudu, what the Ganud, Chudu, send the Imare. Kaji Gaji, Kaji, what Susan Zerajibana, the Lojanji, no, the Jodubinda Ru is a Marba. So we begin here in section C, going for refuge through commitment or through assertion. According to Dharma Mitra's commentary on the Sutra on Discipline, going for refuge through commitment means upholding the Buddha as the teacher of refuge, the teaching Nirvana as the actual refuge, and the community as those who assist us to attain refuge. So here we begin with the Buddha. So the Buddha, this is asserting
that the Buddha is the ultimate refuge. The Buddha is the one who teaches the teachings that the pathways that lead to the higher realms, the pathways that lead to the liberation or nirvana, and then those pathways which lead to complete Buddhahood. Once one believes that based on practicing these things that the Buddha has pronounced, and by way of 3 different pathways we can achieve these results, we develop a faith in him as we would in a doctor, and we start to look at the Buddha as if the Buddha is a doctor who is able to prescribe us the various pathways to lead to the various results. So this is the first assertion relative to the Buddha, or commitment relative to the Buddha. So we see the Buddha as a doctor. The next point that's made is the teaching, nirvana. So here nirvana is referring to cessations. And there are various types of cessations, and various types of this word nirvana is liberation, and various types of nirvanas. As there are higher and higher levels of cessations, beginning at the path of seeing, where we have the path of release, where the lowest level of a cessation begins to occur. So we have this uninterrupted path where there is an abandonment of some sort of negativity happening, and then a path of release which abandons that path, and at that point we have a cessation. So there are various levels of cessations that work up to the highest level of cessation, which is the cessation of the obstructions to omniscience, and by abandoning those, one has achieved Buddhahood. But there are also the cessations of the afflictive obstructions and so forth that bind one to just cyclic existence, and other levels of abandonments or cessations that occur along the path, beginning at the path of seeing, at the path of release, on the path of seeing. So this is where we begin to see these cessations happening. And this is what the nirvana part here is referring to, and it's referring to the Dharma jewel. So the Dharma jewel, these cessations that are occurring through reliance upon various practices to make them occur. And the final point that's made is the community as those who assist us to attain refuge, the Sangha, those who are aspiring to virtue. Those who are aspiring to virtue are aspiring to virtuous, the practices and so forth, the practices that lead to the higher realms, the practices that lead to liberation, the practices that lead to complete Buddhahood. These practitioners that follow what the Buddha has taught. So here it says the Buddha is the teacher of refuge. The Sangha members are the followers of what the Buddha has taught, the followers of the pathways which lead to the Dharma jewel, which is the cessation of these at these various levels just mentioned. Jason.
Tapana Kinsik Nebata, Trebi, Nabata Sugar, Neba Yobayana, who Dada Tangarota, Nancy shaking a Dada Childe, and the Dada Tekazul Taji Jene, and Nasat Shigrota, Nasat Shene, and Chulu Nasan Dereja, Nasati Niebo, Penta Sagures, or Dada Keba Tege, what Nasati Niebo Penta Jebaina, and Neba Tegim Hen Sebaina, and Nasatanu. मैं चुत लाते हैं तेरे मुझे लाते जामे तू लाता नैजू को संभालता वो तो सो लात तो मैं ना बोले मुझे तेरे वाले जबालते हैं अन्य मैं सवालते हैं नासात मैं बोले दो नासात मैं बोल चुते अन्य लाते यहाँ से नहीं बोलते हैं न्यू में वो तो शी रुआ खान रुआ मैं बतलाऊं गोदे लाते मारे में गोदे इंसान गोदे से आते गोदे चे Gendu la Chasu Sonu Trusu Sonu Gune Chasu Roatis, Aguni Chadrubin Darusu, Imbare, Geni Kaji Genji, Kaji Robo, Kamiatachi, Imbare, Kamakut Gasore, never in them Hagon to the Namakuk Chibina Nebare, and Kotabares, and never Sabasu, maybe that That's
so when we begin to look at the Buddha in the way of a doctor, we can look at it in regular terms. When we are diagnosed, when we have a sickness of some sort, we go to a doctor. And if we have a diagnosis of cancer or diabetes, this diagnosis takes place because the doctor knows the nature of the illness that we have. So the doctor is very clear on the nature of the illness that we have and knows exactly what to prescribe in order for us to be free of the illness. Here, we are bound by our karma and afflictions, afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. And the Buddha is a doctor who is able to prescribe exactly what one needs to do to be free from those negativities. So it's for this reason that the Buddha is compared to a doctor. And then the next point that's made is the pathway. The pathway is compared to medicine. Because by depending upon the path or by relying upon the path, one can be freed from the path that the Buddha has taught. One can be freed from the various afflictions, the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. So here, this is why the path is compared to the medicine that one takes in order to be freed of the illness. One is freed of the illness of the afflictions and the obstructions and so forth. And then lastly, when we look at those aspiring to virtue, or the Sangha jewel, they are sometimes compared to a helpful nurse. When a doctor needs an aid, for instance, a nurse comes on board in order to kind of help the patient through the process. So we can look at the Sangha jewel, or those aspiring to virtue, as those who are our teachers, or even those who are just helpful companions to us. When we're looking at those who are practicing these pathways and so forth. If we reflect on it in this way, we can see that the Buddha is like a doctor, that the Dharma itself is like the medicine, and that the Sangha is like a helpful aid or a helpful nurse to help us.
군중대 안에 등에 대비주 군중대 내지 주나버지 내는 시자 내지 주는 봉자라서 내는 등에 법이 되고 내는 군중 법이 되면 말봐 내는 도자서는 고된데 말봐 고된냐데 펜 때문에 내는 람법이 되고 고된도 용하라 아니면 해던다이 내는 랑데 된주랑 타비랑 사지공투불랑도 냐네 제바이나 아니 뭐데 내던다이 등에 주단지바도 가네 안에 고된 용그레스 어디서 말봐 줄라메 내는 시자 내지 주는 봉자라 내는 도자 맨에 때문에 샤와들 등에 주단 도보바도 되진라 시자 봉자 리바시 템바지스 어디 줄라메 어디ren도
Less so. So when we look at the Four Noble Truths, we can look at this in a similar way. We can look at so the Four Noble Truths: the superior truth of suffering, the superior truth of cessation, the superior truth of suffering, superior truth of origin, superior truth of cessation, and superior truth of path. So we find a quote from the Uttara Tantra, Maitreya's Sublime Continuum, that says, "Recognize you are ill, eliminate the cause of the illness, attain health, rely on a remedy. Likewise, you should recognize, eliminate, attain, and rely upon suffering, its cause, its cessation, the path, respectively." So here, what Lord Maitreya is doing in the Sublime Continuum is showing how the suffering is like an illness, and that the cause of the illness is like the origin of suffering. So when we're looking at the diagnosis of an illness, one diagnoses it, and he or she recognizes that they are ill. So this is compared to the truth of suffering. Then looks for what caused that illness, and looks to abandon it. And this is the cause of the illness, and this is compared in the Uttara Tantra to the cause, but in this order, to the cause of suffering or origin of suffering. Attaining health means being free from the illness that one has been diagnosed of and understands the cause of. And here, in this case, this is compared to the cessation of suffering. So this attainment of health is referring to the attainment of cessation. And then here it says, rely on a remedy. And the remedy here is referring to the path, the truth of path. Through relying upon the truth of path, one is able to abandon the negativities, get rid of what causes the suffering by abandoning the afflictive obstructions, by abandoning the obstructions to omniscience, thereby being able to achieve health, which is cessation. So the third noble truth. So this is how we can also look at the nature of suffering and so forth, and then compare that then to the previous explanation with the doctor and so forth.
我大人都慢慢有个呢，叫什么？大人把得来多，人都慢慢有个呢，人都慢慢有个叫人都慢慢有个呢，叫是送完呢啥？南巴当西比东巴当是，南巴的西比东比一切吧。南比东巴是看得起过来，西比东巴是看得起过来是，东比一切吧些，东巴是，那南巴上去东比。temba to kande kande ja gore shirubi temba to kande kande ja gore tembi chaba tala loba na ji chume shene sa ta nambi chul luno jekenge ne kaza ta shirubi chul luno jekenge kaza to ngolo ane kashi ya ga ta kashi duga wotele chaba kande yores what the temba chaba kande yore temba chaba kande yore ane temba lobi kaza chaba chume chaba kande yoris marbe hotel he de do ta de naga de chabre do ta
Okay, so this section then deals with going for refuge by refusing to acknowledge other refuges. And Rinpoche says this can get tricky. Going for refuge by refusing to acknowledge other refuge means understanding the differences between what the Buddha is asserting and what the other religious traditions are asserting, and finding what the truth is. So clarifying what this assertion is and what this assertion is, and understanding the difference between the two. And seeing what the difference between the word teacher, meaning the teacher in the Buddhist tradition, versus teacher in another tradition would be. Why this teacher has a different point to be made than this teacher. I'm sorry if that's exactly it. This teacher has a different point than this teacher. So this will get into the difference between Buddhism and non-Buddhist, and some things of Buddhism are very good, and some things of other religions are very good, and some things of other religions aren't very clear. So this is just a search for the truth within the points in comparison. Truth in comparison. Truth by comparison.
다 상지 가지고 다 가서 어제 글론타 케나지 세제다의 세진도 레바탈 나이가 롱아샤이 고지미스 글론타가 케바이난다 어제 상지가 송세 간거 케나고 말스 상지가 송샤바들 주센다 덴바 주센 야분도나 아네 켈레스 So the Buddha himself stated, bhikshus and bhikshunis, please do not just assert that this Buddhism is real because I said it. Make sure that you can establish it by reason and truth. So it's for this reason that we do this. The Buddha stated, don't just, monks and nuns, don't just follow me because of what I say. Establish it by reason and establish it as truth. 어제 다들 쇼르비 담바다 나비 담바 쳐바대 내가 사세뉴 걔들 세뉴는 곧세 세데 천자기 지야 문사야 돌다야 어떤 게 서서진 마뉴나 세나로 셔마요 이제부터 어떤 종라고 말.
So if we were to buy gold, if we're not very careful, if we aren't certain of who we're purchasing it from, and we're not doing the tests that are necessary, we might have something that is filled with sand on the inside and isn't really solid gold. So it's something that we need to cut and rub and check for accuracy and find out what is true. And this is the point here.
and then Mosung got you, but that Monjo, Jose Gojo, Shindu Gojo Sumar, Shera de Maduna, Monjuje, Monjus and Mosung Tondia, Monjulo, Zo da, Mijig Zo Tongre, Anju Dagore, Zo da, Tre Roja, what is going on Mosung Tongre, Javashego Marva, Monjuje. Then the Jose Gojusana. Jose Gojusana Tang as a Tombani Sanatan, Damaji Sanatan, Damani to Jose Gojumarva, Tanda, Motuji Tanda Latene, Tobershawa, Motuji Tanda than Tobershawa, Jose Gojula Marva, Joan Hashitan, Matabatan, Damanita, Damajeta, Dendri Lanta, Tabi Lanta, Sanju to Lanta to Nolo, Jose Gojuna Marveta, Jose Motuji Tanda than Tobershawa.
Shinju.
That Shindu Gojus again, that Ichi Tandal than Tubashawa, Ichi Tandal than Tubashawa, and the Shinkus is Marva. Tangato Nato and Kasure. Nato painted the later Nemobala and the major Olympics. And Nato painted later Suicide. So let's argue the murder. And then Lobacaba Sabbaths, or two cities, Una, Yudrota, and Nazo Lanson, the Jusensiate woman.
That's a Shinjuku.
And the Sanjig Rola Tene, Ishijin to what is it, Shingula in Bare.
That's up. So when we're acknowledging various, so let me start here. So the pronouncements of Lord Buddha are the Kangjur that we have here behind us. They are the authentic pronouncements of Lord Buddha, and that's where we find the contents of the truths that we can find from our side, what differentiates our teacher. So the pronouncements of Lord Buddha are what our teacher says, and this is how where we begin from our stance as to what the Buddhist truth is. So when we say the difference in teachers, the way we look at our teacher's proof is in the Kangjur. So there are various types of phenomena that we can ascertain. There's manifest phenomena, hidden phenomena, and extremely hidden phenomena. So for instance, a manifest phenomena are things that we can see through direct valid cognition, that any ordinary being, colors, shapes, smells, tastes, tactile sensations, things that are manifest. Our eye consciousness observes a form through direct valid cognition. So the eye consciousness observes a form. That is a manifest phenomena that is being apprehended by a direct valid cognition by an eye consciousness. So this is a munjur. This is the manifest phenomena. The next gunzi munjur is the hidden phenomena that can be realized by reliance upon a correct sign. So one can use analysis to try to be able to posit certain phenomena. So one can use correct signs to prove the existence of previous lives, and correct signs to prove that these various pathways will lead to various liberations and cessations, and proofs that can prove that things are impermanent, things are momentary, by relying on a correct sign that this is momentary, therefore it's impermanence, for instance. That's a hidden phenomena, this impermanence that's going on, but it can be realized through correct sign. The existence of previous lives, the existence of future lives, the various pathways, etc. But the final type of phenomenon, extremely hidden phenomenon, can only be realized through analysis of faith, of conviction. So it's a correct sign of faith of conviction. So one is then looking at what the Buddha stated and relying upon the scriptural truths that the Buddha stated, and because one has faith and conviction in what the Buddha states, it then becomes a truth that one can believe in, even though it's an extremely hidden phenomena. So an example of an extremely hidden phenomena, we know we're a human being right now. So it caused a previous life and it caused some throwing karma and then completing karma in order for us to be having this experience at this moment as a human being. But who was creating that previous throwing karma, and in what geographical location was he or she living when they were creating the karma that created this experience, and what time was it, etc., etc., etc. These are extremely hidden phenomenons and not something that we can rely on a correct sign to prove or rely upon any ordinary means for achieving a belief in. So these are the different forms of phenomena. The manifest we can understand. The hidden, we need a correct sign, but extremely hidden, we have to rely on the faith and conviction in Scripture.
Sen zambu yinba ta sen doja yinba ta suka lo sen ta mi tungu marwa ta ngazu tungu marwa ta ma jen da ga sen ta ngazu mi tungu marwa sen zambu yinna mi tungu marwa ne sen ga ba yinna mi tungu marwa tungu marwa de sen zambu ga nanju juro lu ga nanju I da khadu la tene ko sen zambu res khadu jen da la tene o to ko sen doja res ko long lang sons the
younger Sunan, Gongam this self. Yeah. So we find we can also rely on various signs. So if we were to look at a person, we couldn't say, oh, that person has a good mind, or has a positive state of mind, or has a negative state of mind. But we can rely upon correct signs, as Dharmakirti says in the commentary on the Compendium of Valid Cognition, is if someone's face suddenly becomes very flushed, we can see that that's a sign that they're becoming angry, if they're exhibiting this physical posture. So this is a correct sign that we can understand the disposition of what's going on inside of somebody. So this is another example of how correct signs are used. The Shati dan Rabudu. Oh, okay. Okay. Less so, so, for instance, if one is acting very compassionately and is a very loving person and seems to care for people a lot, that's a correct sign that we can see that they have an internal positive mind. And that would be called a resultant, correct sign of result, a dritta danda, a correct sign of a result. And another example of that, we find it again in commentary on the Compendium of Valid Cognition by Dharmakirti. He says, if you see in a distant mountain smoke billowing, you can ascertain that there's fire there. So Dharmakirti says that you can use this is a correct sign of result also, so to establish these various things. One the deep
what the Tuni to be shared out to the Kazate Juliana, and then Gasu Kandas shares Shevaina, and then Seja doing our tone, Shanju Sambazuke, Seja doing our tone at it, and the mean Choma Lucha Babadan, Luga, Mandao Jungozero, Telatena, what the Kazate Jula,
So how do we know if someone has achieved a state of renunciation that is turned into love, compassion, and bodhicitta? And we see a correct sign that shows that when they hear of suffering, their eyes well up with water, and the hairs stand up on their skin when they even hear of suffering. So this is a correct sign that could show that one has this love and compassion and is a bodhisattva. So, and then it also says, when we look at in relation to the wisdom realizing emptiness, it says that if a bodhisattvas who are on the, at least at the path of seeing or path of meditation, and even begin to speak of emptiness, their eyes well up with tears.
What the swing summer, could you don't want to say what the Jones could you thought the swing but that on there, down the shin to talk to Matua, and then the shin to talk to Matua in a Kalakasa and also she told the Marbe. Look at Najula Tene, and the cook control language about down, and then sends on me about the Kalakasa she told. So we are able to establish through using signs, using correct signs, the various things that would normally be hidden to us. For instance, the examples of the red face and the other examples that were previously given. We can establish a truth based on those correct signs and that we were previously went over. Tangasu Mashiki Nasa Mabuji, Dada Suki, Dada Suku Tajina, what the Meg Tata go to the treasure number, the computer, not the thing. Lanson Nasa the computer and Taj, Lanson Tata Latene, Nasa Shino. Motuji was what to Zumarbe.
So a doctor relies upon various ways of checking in order to, and machinery, in order to diagnose an illness. So this is an example of reliance upon correct signs through just the reliance upon a correct sign. And this is an inferential valid cognition that he or she arrives at that is true, that is valid, but it is arrived at through the use of signs.
That was Sally said, I'm going to carry you to Trisha Jig, Pegula Sayo, Trisha no died. Say about the
And then the scientists have even made metal detectors that are able to go over the ground and then tell if there is gold or something to be found underneath it. They have a machine that they can. I assume Rinpoche is speaking of a metal detector. If I'm wrong on tape, I apologize. But they're able to use a machine to go over the earth to find out if there's gold in it.
What this
is considered.
And
Ranjin, Drita, Ichi Tepa, Ichi Danda, Ichi Drop, Tsikchipa, Ichi. I have it here, had it.
Dans la Mologie, j'ai la Jésus Papa, suis dans la Mologie. Chez le Goju que rite sur Galo, Penji que les tout, Pepena, Susu Amade, Ama Euro, Ama Jebro, Ama Kadu Jebre, Loka du Jebre, and then Samuel Jebre, Niemel Jebre, Kadu Jebre, Station on Shedo. What the
faith.
So
these have been examples of correct sign through result. But there are three different types of correct signs. There's correct signs, natural correct signs or correct signs of nature, the correct signs of result, and then correct signs of conviction or faith in conviction. And then I asked just for clarification on that, and that is that very extremely hidden phenomena where you know who your mother is, but your mother's 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 mother's, et cetera, where they were, and those difficult points within that fall categorically under something that we have to just have faith in by establishing, by being told to us, or some sort of paperwork, translator's note. So it's a faith of conviction in that.
that Nami Temba and the Shajatuba Nami Temba Marve. Shajatuba Nami Temba is
Buddha Shakyamuni is our teacher.
Nami Temba is. That should be Temba Mati Temba Trola Suba, should be Temba Yorova. And the Shajatuba and the Temba Yashwitris. And the Meti Temba to Shajatuba Joris. Kuchetan Yabrete, Yuantichu Yorete, Shajatuba Latuna, and the Temba member is Temba member Logro Marva. Did you think that you say,
So here now we get into the point that our teacher is Lord Buddha Shakyamuni. And then we will compare the worth between Buddhist teachers, and in this case, the teacher we're speaking of is Buddha Shakyamuni, and the worth of non-Buddhist teachers, and so forth, and looking at them by way of their differences, and then establishing the superiority of the Buddha as a teacher based on correct signs and reasoning and proof. So now we'll go through this. Buddha and Buddha is the superior teacher because he has abandoned all fault and achieved all excellent qualities. Sorry. So the first point that we can make is that why is this teacher superior? Buddha Shakyamuni has abandoned all of the types of afflictions and their imprints, abandoned the afflictive obstructions as well as the obstructions to omniscience. Other teachers have not.
Da shere ba zoge da nga zu shere ne bu no ai no ye se mo se do da chuno de ma ru bres zu de ma ru bres da ne nga de ma ru bres un ra nga de ma ru bres nga de ne da zu tu zon la de ne ru bres de ne da song de bres da ba la ma de ba ran de ma res ane shere ba zo be je zo nga la so nga de be je da zu tu zon la da ba la ma de ba
Rama, Atman. Less so. Hindi. Less so.
So here
the difference between the teachings is that the Buddha has stated the way to eliminate the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience, where the outsiders, which is literal translation for non-Buddhist, it's outsider, shalupa, other than anything other than Buddhist. So outsiders' views. Because the Buddha has taught things, we find in the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge, we find there is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, etc. These statements that are being made to prove the lack of true establishment of phenomena, the lack of true establishment of the I, proving them by way of showing that these things are not truly established, have no inherent existence, and merely come together as a collection that serves as a basis of designation for a name, for a nominal designation. But there is no inherently existent this or that outside of that nominal designation that's named on top of a basis of designation that's a collection. So it is the grasping at things as being true, the I, for instance, as being truly established, which causes the afflictions and so forth. And so, by realizing the lack of true establishment, one is able to supply, and the Buddha is the one who has supplied us with this antidote to the negativities which force us into suffering. Non-Buddhist teachers establish that there is this some singularity of self that abides within this collection that we are in. So we have this collection, we have this body, but there is an idea that there's a singularity, there's some inherently existent self, a truly established self of some sort, an Atman or an ego that truly abides, that is separate from those parts. And in the Buddhist view, negates that. And it's because the negation of that true self, truly established phenomenon, allows for the negation of all forms of suffering and obstructions to all knowing. So the reason for this sutra stating there's no eye, no ear, no nose, it's because the mistaken view that believes that there is a truly established any among those that grasps at them causes the afflictions, which causes us to have action or karma, and then produces suffering.
What that denzi to kui zaware denzi la den yo mo che gore le che gore dongen yo gore namba ge wote she mar ba namba ge te she dro ta shure ba jo ge denzi to kui zaware se lo mar ba ane ta hindu so ina wat su zo bare se na shi ba ge zo bare se lo mar ba e shu ba so ga ge zo bare se ane ga ge zo bare se mar ba so
we find this difference in that this grasping at true establishment is the root of our samsara, the root of cyclic existence. And by grasping at this true establishment, we then create the afflictions and the karma, and we're bound to cyclic existence. And this is why. Non-Buddhist or the outsider's belief is that all of these things are created by a Shiva or created by some external god that is making it happen. And this is a very big distinction between the Buddhist philosophy and non-Buddhist philosophy, in that the Buddhist philosophy is stating that our grasping is creating all of these things, whereas the every experience, whereas non-Buddhists posit some sort of external creator of them. In some way.
ko yenda ji zo yo res denji ne ba yimbe ji I dan dembe ji rinji che ba yimbe ji de sen sung la tene shiba ge zo ba do do
ale dunji nupa I
dan demba ko I yo res
shape
I yo zan ko zu khen ji go res
then samba kale
kamba kale trobe ji doji le le ji
abide
na shena du kale che ma do kanga de ji yo mu do Doji lela ju bejer. Ane deji ne ba yin bejer. I da den bejer. Ju sen son la den ne o de shiba ge zo ba.
Dunji nupa I dang de
nan den lo ni ba no de.
I gotta look at it.
Hindu ku zo ge de shiba ge zo bi ju sen son ko do da.
The Dunji nupa I dang the kale
Riji tu bejer riji. Okay,
so the Hindus' philosophy, when it comes to the creation or Shiva's creating, there are proofs that are given for there needing to be a creator. First is that there are things performing a function. So there are things that are performing a function, and they have shape. So must be a creator, because something's performing a function and there is some shape to it, and this progressively happens. So it doesn't just spontaneously all arise, like the Rinpoche said, in the forest, the trees are slowly growing and so forth. So there's almost an architect, if you will, behind it. I'm looking for a better word and I don't have it. So there's almost like these are the three proofs that that Shiva has created, or the Hindus posit that the creation theory, the posit that there is a creator. Time for cookies. So this isn't a point where we're starting to say that other religions are not good. This isn't the point that we're making here. When we look at Christianity and the multiple benefits that Christianity and the worship of God and Jesus and so forth have done, there are common points that are very, very good. We are looking right now at the differences. So there are many common points, but right now we're not looking at those. We're looking at the differences.
What that
love, compassion, and the desire to help other people is amazing. The way that Christian practitioners engage. It's amazing how they engage in these. So right now we're speaking about the tenet systems of religions right now and the differences. So when we're saying the Buddhist is superior because of these tenet systems and differences, we are just looking at those specific points. You have to know what the nature of what a teacher of Buddhism is. What is a teacher of Hinduism? What is a teacher of Christianity? What is a teacher of, I think, Judaism? What is their nature? What is that? Then once you know that, then you can use your own awareness or intelligence and start applying logic and reasoning and correct science. Leia? Okay, easy. So we find, I wanted to get the exact quote, but in Chandrakirti's Madhyamika Avatara, we find that the use of debate is not for the point of just defeating one's opponents. One shouldn't be utilizing this philosophical approach for the point of defeating outsiders' views. They should be used for the point of achieving the liberation and omniscience. So these debates are for the point of this. This dialogue and analysis is for the point of understanding how we achieve freedom from cyclic existence. So how does one achieve cessation? One relies upon a path. So what is a path? And so one then analyzes what a path is, and what the nature of a path is, and what are the Four Noble Truths, and what are the nature of the Four Noble Truths, and what are the two truths, and what are the nature of the two truths, and what are the causes of the lower realms of cyclic existence, and what are the causes of the higher realms of cyclic existence. So this dialogue is for the point of finding truth and not for the point of defeating opponents or some kind of arrogance. I think in here it speaks of pride. It's not for the point of pride or arrogance or defeating or an opponent. It's for achieving a truth. And you can look it up. It's in here in the Madhyamika Avatara. I apologize if I misquoted it, but that's the pith of the meaning, is that we should be doing this for the point of understanding these pathways and so forth, and that's why we're looking at these tenets and comparing the tenets.
That number is number 2. Naje chulu to number the member is lava ina, and then no no. And what is no number sanju to the manger or Shira Mama, Duduba, Sanzaba Omaba. Could Nalule, Tawa Tara, and the Tama Oma Macano is Nalu Tungmanas. Tama Oma Macano, Diuma de Oma Cano, Oma Bay, Sanzaba Cagres, Sanzaba Bay, Duduba Cagre, Dudubishada Maka, Nalu good.
So there is no problem here, though, where we find this defeating of various tenet systems of non-Buddhist traditions, because it happens in Buddhist traditions. We have 4 tenet systems in Buddhism. We have the Vaibhashika school, which is called the Great Exposition School. We have the Sautrantika school, which is called the Sutra school. We have Chittamantran school, which is the mind-only school. And we have Madhyamaka school, which is the middle way school. The middle way school negates the mind-only school. The mind-only school negates the Sutra school. The Sutra school negates the Great Exposition School. So even within Buddhist tenet systems, we find, based on the various affinities, these tenets that differ. So there's no problem.
Tende imesheta da ko bayina ngada rangon maru tende imeshe zondu rajubal ne lagres senza bal ne lagres shira ma dodbat namba sanji to samal ne lagres
Ranjupa Ka. Okay, so when we look at just a simple pervasion, the subject I am not truly established because I dependently originate. We just negated the middle way autonomy school, the middle way, the mind-only school, the Sutra school, and the Great Exposition school. Just by making that one pervasion. The subject I is not truly established because of dependent origination.
Tapana Omar Rajuba the Tanjuani, the Omaba Jibare, never Marus Kuninja Logres. Ina never Marus Kusantan Kagaris.
Now, the middle way consequent school and the middle way autonomy school both assert the lack of true establishment. But what they assert that lack of true establishment is different.
That's
so.
So the
way that the difference is between the consequentialists and the autonomists is that the autonomists assert that there is a connection between the establishment of the subject and object. So when it takes both the comings together of from the side of the Ranjupa, the Nigu, Dadandak. The Ranjupa, the
나도 도비용 그 잡아래.
Okay.
다지문의 주바, 봉봉간의 주바 니투레스.
Okay. So the middle way autonomy school says that there is an I, but it depends upon these aggregates and so forth coming together. So there is, in order for this establishment to take place, there is this I that then connects with these aggregates, and then there is this being. Whereas the consequence school only asserts that there is a collection that serves as a basis for a name, and that there isn't an I and an aggregates that coming together making something. There is just a collection that's named. So this is the distinction in the lack of true establishment. The autonomy school says it is not truly established because it takes the I and the aggregates coming together, but it takes these two sides according to the autonomy school, whereas the consequentialists merely say it's a name, imputation. It's a subtle.
Baba bebe kaso 나한테 추트 그걸로 두비용 파자버에 다지군 세주바 니투리 랑은 주버레스 대바마 주버레라고.
So the Chandrarashita and Baba Vega both held these autonomy school, middle way autonomy school views, where they stated that there was this coming together of these two in order for an emergence, if you will. So there is a necessity of these coming to two for an emergence, and that they weren't truly established because of this. Rawang and Drupa Yurube. So that, but there was some independence there is some independent establishment. That is, they are negating the lack of true establishment, but there is some independent establishment taking place because the two are coming together. So there's two independent establishments coming together that make a lack of true establishment. But there is in the middle way consequence school, there isn't this idea of this dual necessity.
나오냐베 상로되게 나한테 다시 폼불라 따장레마도지 폼빙원을 줘요 말했어. 폼불라 따장.
So the aggregates are merely imputed. The aggregates don't have this separate inherent establishment of some sort, or intrinsic establishment. They are merely a collection that's named according to the consequentialists. So the consequentialists don't say there's any substance there of this or that. There is merely a name being placed on this basis of designation. So if we have a mirror, we can look and we can see a reflection or a picture. So is the face the mirror, or is the face that's reflecting? So we say that it's not me there. It's based on a collection that comes together and then is named this reflection as I see myself. So when we look at grasping at a rope as a snake, for instance, it's the very same thing as grasping as the I as having some sort of intrinsic existence, or as having some true establishment. It is the fact that the rope is not a snake and that the I is not truly established that undoes that.
타니발라 잡아 타니비 세메면에바 돈돈주의 세메면에바 송상송나 다성도 여버스 나오냐비 상루데 상루 나데 폼볼 다성레스 다성도 여버스 제주송 창예시 타바 둘냐비 상루 타바 드르데 타발레 다성도 여버 제주송 창마레스 다성도 여마레스 나도 여버스
So the only difference here is that there's an incorrectly established designation when we're looking at the rope and the snake. So when we're looking at the establishing as a collection, for instance, and we're looking at a rope and we're establishing it through naming it as a snake. When we do this in the case of the eye, we're not misnaming it. So the name is correct in the case of the naming of the eye, and that's the that is a part of a difference when we look at those examples, because the nominal designation as the rope is a snake is wrong. It's not a correct name, but the name is correct when we name the eye based on the basis of designation. So that's not a mistaken name. It's just mistaken if it's other than that. So the name isn't mistaken. It's correctly naming it, whereas in the rope and the snake, it's not correctly naming it.
타바드 드마인 타니비 세메노베시스 타바 드이스나 타니비 세메노용으로스 간에서 나가서나 타바 드마인 베시비 참아주로 타바 드마인 베시비 참아되게 타바 드든즈로르노다
The sema sum.
타바 드마인 베시비로 지도와
So once we
타바
know,
드마인 베시비로 되게 타바 드든즈로르노 말바
so that what the understanding that recognizes that the rope is a rope and not a snake abandons and acts as an opponent to the grasping at the rope as a snake.
타바 드이마 유르슬로나 되요 마르타니비 세메노베시 타바 드마인 베시비 참아되게 노베시
So we're able to establish by valid cognition that the rope is not a snake, it is merely a rope. Rinpoche, sema sum labsan. Rinpoche named three
타니발라
kinds
잡아서 다 너무 타니발라 잡아서 들었다 다 간데 나한테 타니발라 잡아인데 나한테 나오냐베 도바다 자유로 나주지 나집을 유로 나집을 유로 나집 도비 유로 나집 도비 유로 나시집 자유 저자로 타니에서나 나시집 자다 나집 도바 로니 들어보다 로니 타니라 그래 나한테 나집을 유래 나시집 자유로다 타니발 잡아서 어떨까
So,
됐다 유연한다면 타니발 잡 천르다
so Rinpoche is establishing the naming by correct names by showing how the imputation also has to be the correct imputation for the basis of designation. So the various factors and details which allow one to assert that this is a valid name for this or that depends upon the details that come together in order to be nominally designated as such.
다 나도 내가 타니비 세메 타바 주의스나 타니비 세메 오도와 타니비 세마 쇼스나 타바 주마이베 두비 세마 타니비 세마로 데노다
So then when we look at a mistaken valid cognition relative to the observing a rope as a snake, non-mistaken valid cognition is that recognizes that it's a rope is what needs to occur in order to subdue that grasping or mistake.
나 내가 주고 예스 라우스나
If I believe that I am truly established,
예스나 요 말이스 돈돈 주직 세메노 그래서 나 내가 마주고 둘로도노
so we can prove by established valid cognition that we are not truly established by valid cognition.
어떤 나도 요아래 따정도 요아래 제주송 사이에 타니발라 잡아 타니비 세메면에 봐 돈돈 주직 세메면에 봐 송상에 타니송 따정도 요래스 타바 주임바데 따정도 매데 제주송만 사이에 타니비 세메면에 봐
So there are three points. I'm going to need to look these up, but they're basically establishing that it is a correct name for a correct basis. And there are qualifying factors for doing so. I'm going to need to look them up. I don't want to just make something up. But they're establishing natures to prove that something is validly named as it should be named as it is. So for instance, the rope being a snake doesn't meet the qualifications for it to be valid cognition, whereas the naming of I is a correct name because it meets the qualifications for it to be a valid cognition, a name, a valid name, a valid cognition name. We get to this. Okay, so in the third volume of the Great Treatise on the Stages of the Path, you can find this in the Special Insight section, which is a great read. Good luck. So then you can get to that section, and then you'll be able to understand and see that what we're speaking about is similar to what is in the LamRim Chenmo. So you'll find the material, how to establish the correct naming in that section. So the Buddhist teacher is superior to the outsider instruction because Buddhist is able to get rid of the afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience, and the other non-Buddhist traditions still have this grasping at true establishment or grasping at an I of some sort. So here's a distinction that we're making to show superiority. So now the distinction of the teacher, 189, begins.
Da jenji dunba ne tele duba des jenji dunba de ne jön meba maris jön yoris neba duba zimi denzi yobejere o tene ge jisen ko marbe yönten yonsu zo marbe tanji chaba re go marwa jen dunba tele duba de chaba phadules chaba phadule da ne dunba jen pone jonde chola jawsu che deji le de jena ju. Okay, so
the distinction of the teacher. The Buddha is without fault and has perfected all good qualities. So the Buddha has gotten rid of all of the afflictive obstructions. The Buddha has gotten rid of the obstructions to omniscience. So has gotten rid of all negativities, has no faults whatsoever, and has the perfection of every excellent quality. So here is the first point that's made. But the teachers of other religions are the opposite of this. So there is not a being, an outsider's view that will allow that outsider to reach the state of omniscience, to get rid of all faults, and to perfect all good qualities. So therefore, it says they're the opposite of this, because it's not possible to abandon these afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience, which the Buddha can. And then we find a quotation from Udbhata Siddha Vaman's praise of the exalted, I'm not going to even try, Visesa Sattva. Praise to all those Sanskrit readers out there. I just want to say, who are watching on video, I really admire you. Having forsaken other teachers, I go to you for refuge, O Bhagavan. If someone should ask why, it is because you have no faults and possess all good qualities. So this is just a quote of homage to Buddha stating the same points. The Shiluka Tambola Loson.
That's Sanjin Jun Man on the Yumobata, she did Mare, Ponsabers, or to go to you did Danga de Batrovas with Zita. They devote near Moda. And they devote don't get them Marber. What does the Junga Sanji Ponsa?
So all these faults, the faults of the truth of suffering, have been abandoned, and have been abandoned by getting rid of the grasping at true establishment. So the faults of suffering and so forth have been gotten rid of, and by the process of getting rid of those faults, the afflictions have been abandoned, the afflictions to a liberation, as well as those to omniscience. So here this is showing that there is no more suffering and only excellent qualities that the Bhagavan possesses.
So here
we would say the outsiders' teachers have faults, don't possess all good qualities because they have a grasping at true establishment. So this would be how we would look at it to establish it as reason.
So here it would So the Buddha has all of the obstructions to omniscience, are literally the obstructions, obstacles to knowing, or objects of knowledge, obstacles to objects of knowledge, literally. So the Buddha has eliminated all of those and possesses all of these excellent qualities, whereas the non-Buddhist teachers do not. So if
one has these afflictive obstructions and has this grasping at true establishment and afflictions, then one does not have all good qualities.
Tele doba this gente tamba shiru tamba zukangalo kyo meba dan yeden yonsu zuba mare tele doba res kyo da jebare yeden yonsu mazuba res tele doba des marbe lazarbe
The Shloka Nipa.
tel lazarwa da ti khond cheba phado drang cheba phado les cheba phado de inson
Rinpoche detsko nge the Shloka ni lo masun.
what the kale lazarwa
Okay, the more I reflect on other non-Buddhist traditions, the greater becomes my faith, O protector. Their minds are ruined by faults of tenets devised by those who are not omniscient. Those whose minds are ruined cannot even see you, faultless teacher. So then now we get into the difference of the teaching.
There is my. Da cheba phado do the cheba phado de inson sha. Cheba phado de jagal pinja ni do pinja ni. Shibal Josun to King Pinjanindo.
Two brothers.
Shibal Josun to Tom Kuni Shiriba Isare. Kuni Shibal Josun to Waters. Then the Kuni Ru Ganjan Le Shiba Chokan to Waters. Many the Kuni Pinjaris, Shiribaris, Shibal Josun to Waters. And the Kuni Ru Ganjan Le Ru Ganjas Berge Lomarjil Sago and Gahamu. Shiba is a ginger. Ru Ganjan Le Shibal Chokan to Waters, happening to Shiba. Then the Kuni Shiba Tonsons Shiba. Shiba ge Sanjil Johnson to Waters. Shiba. Rapunji to Buddha.
Shacha okay.
But the Jaga Pinjani Tomaris. Kuni go what the Shiba ge Sanjil Johnson to Kuni Tomaris. Kuni Johnson Shibaro.
So there's a story. The Riga.
Himalaya Juro.
Ri Chipa? Okay, just dialect, sorry. So there's a story of two brothers who were non-Buddhist practitioners who wanted to go make offering to Shiva. So they climbed the mountain where they knew that Shiva was abiding and wanted to make an offering to Shiva. So when they arrived there to make the offering to Shiva, they saw that Shiva was actually praying and going for refuge to Lord Buddha at that time when they got there. So that inspired within them the faith in Lord Buddha, and then they converted immediately to Buddhism because they saw that their teacher they were making offerings to was praying to Buddha. And then they became Buddhists. Oh, and then they wrote many texts about Buddhism. So now with the Dalai Lama's teaching of going on, there's a lot of different commentaries that are coming into English now that we're going to be able to... The teaching in South India that Dalai Lama gave. So there's a lot of the commentaries that were utilized and our points are pulled out of from. So we'll have more material. There's 5 books. The Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path, the Medium Stages, Sirting, The Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand as well by Pabunka. Oh, so I only have, I've called Goa Kamsen to get the books that the Dalai Lama has been utilizing. I only have, so that we can use those as well. That'll be helpful. Some of them are in English now too, so in printable formats and so forth. So we'll be able to all. It's a really amazing thing happening.
Cheba Pado to what Jagal Pinjani waters, Kuni Shiru Pares, Kuni Shibal Josu waters, Kuni Shiba Chubicheto, Rukan Chen Chimbares, and the Kuni and then Shiba Sanjil Josu water Kuni Tumbares, then the Kuni Nabachana, Sanji Tubamu Tribers, Patus or Timber.
So these teachers who were initially non-Buddhists changed their minds, and then we find this in the texts, this story of these two who then went on to write many Buddhist texts because of this experience that they had.
Kuni Trikeni de Dumba Jen and Shibala Soboto Sukalo, Johnson Rugme, the Pone, Jordan Chola Josuche, Shajatu Josu, Jordan Chola Josuche, and the Dumba Jen Shirubi, Shibala Soboto Josu Mandune, Shajatu Josu Rugu, Jusen Carres, the G, the G, Ledo, Shena Chus, Jusen Carres. Karjina Sanjil Josunro, Jendal Josum Jusen Karisna, Shena, Chu, Shajatuba Chu, Germangalas, Numo the Siji Division Yomares, Yenten Yosuba Imbejere, Germangala Yenten, what the Tama the Rendo Tama, Tiji Shir Shenas, Javaro Kushin, and Cheba Padu Tonkin, Nibutege, Sanjil Josun, Shibala Subajendal Josun, Mess, Jusen Carres, the G-Shirishina, G-Shis and the mother, Imata, Maimba, the G-Shis at the water, G-Shir, Jusen Tigoro, G-Shirishina, Jusen Yuares, Chajatuba Chu, Mangas, Chajatuba Junior Mare, Numo the Shiji Dibi Mare, Numo Shiji Dibi, Jumpons in Bejer, Yenten Yosuba in Bejer, Jumala Yenten by in Bejer. Isn't Chajatuba Josun, Shirutamazul Josun Rumes, you sent this summer. What the good
So when we look at the praise of the Exalted One, we find the distinction in the teacher, that the distinction is that the Buddha has abandoned all faults, has achieved all excellent qualities. And the more that one reflects on this, the one can see that the non-Buddhist traditions are not as superior. And then we find the examples of those two disciples who went to the mountaintop to make an offering to Shiva, and then saw Shiva going for refuge even to the Lord Buddha because of not having abandoned all faults and not having all excellent qualities. So the point made here is that the teacher is faultless, without fault. So again, in this praise to the Exalted One, we find the points being made that once one reflects on the fact that the non-Buddhist traditions do not eradicate these various afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience, then the more and more one reflects and does a comparative analysis, the more faith one has in Buddha Shakyamuni, and recognizing that he has abandoned all faults and achieved all excellent qualities. And it says that once one recognizes the tenets of the outsider systems, one will see how this will not cause omniscience, devised by those who are not omniscient, those whose minds are ruined cannot see you, faultless teacher, ruined by wrong view, ruined by a grasping at self, a tenet that teaches that there is a true self, is ruining one's mind because it is causing it to not be able to abandon all faults and attain all excellent qualities which the Buddha is able to. So this is the differentiation here that is being made in the praise of the Exalted One. The patu le the puguni chison.
Patu the what the Niga is.
Nika.
Oh. Bija Nindo, Bija
it was written. This quote was written by those two students. That were originally non-Buddhist. So I missed that before. I apologize.
And the Kuni Ru Gajan Shiba Chokadores, Ru Gajan Rudula, Shiba Sanjil Chosen Road, Kuni Tons, and the Kuni Sanjil.
So this was written after, so this came from the Dalai Lama's teaching. And this was written after these students recognized the excellent qualities of the Buddha, after going to the mountaintop to see Shiva and make an offering, and Shiva making offerings to the Buddha. This was then written by these two non-Buddhist brothers.
다 권이가 메디지 줄로라 제다 나상바스 메디지 시르비 네 비참모 보여주러 봐 도솔 로장제네 상르다도 대다네 건초를 상질 대바 용도스.
So once you start to look at many different non-Buddhist tenets and understand what they're saying, and then compare them, the faith in the Lord Buddha will be strengthened.
어제 다 주체 가르스나더네 다 가서 메디제지 존로를 제다 나상바 대대다 건초라 다그선 대바 주로사 다다 탄지체 메비 탄지체마 마임비 산제 마임비 아네 시르비 베자도 쩐도스 주티 쩐제 라센데 상라 나지 쩐메바 베자 쩐메바 어때 덤바 최정모 동호사 덤바 최정 동호사 최정 산지기 덤바 덤바 니가면도 아 덤바 최정 동호 시송베시.
So here it says this talks of this faultless teacher, and it says that if one is following a tenet not devised by a being that is omniscient, then there's faults in it. There's a corruption, and it ruins the mind in a way that it corrupts it into wrong view, because it is not an omniscient being who is giving the correct tenets. So here it says, cannot see even you faultless teacher. So couldn't even see that the teacher was faultless because of the perverted tenets that they are following.
The Catholic Catholic 덤바 최장 무통스 덤바 최장 무통 베일 장다진도와 인실
It says, cannot even see you. 톤 토고 말해.
덤바도 제메도 덤바 최장 무통스 동도 산지기 덤바다 덤바 니갈 세면 로선바래 덤바 최장 무통스 산지기 덤바를 줘요 말해 안에 산 덤바를 줘요 말했어. So
here, can't even see the faultlessness of the instruction, can't see the faultlessness of the instructor because of the perverted tenets they believe. So this is it. So the Buddha is faultless, but an outsider can't even see this because of their view.
덤바 최정 무동스 덤바 샤자 도발 쥐요 말에 쥐메바데 쥐메바 최정 안에 셔르바스 통토 말레스.
So this faultlessness of Lord Buddha, the abandonment of all of these negativities, can't be seen.
셔르바 코르토기 다 예데도 세고 말어 마시드 수수 마시바데 안에 수수 쥐에 마마고바지 산지 쥐를 코너스. 이때 용수 마시가 든 도비다 보면 주요주로 가자. 이제 무슨 뭐지가 돈도 소수 마시비 주요로 소수 주요로다. 그 소수 주요 마마고 가지. 사지 주요로 고그랬다.
So in the Bodhicharyavatara we find that those with these perverted views who can't see the excellent maybe not from Shantideva who can't see the excellent qualities those with perverted views won't even be able to see the those with perverted views that do not know of excellent qualities will not even see them if they are in front of them.
다 덤비 잡았잖아. 다 덤비 잡았다니 사서 말해. 덤비 잡아. 실비 덤바도 남비 덤비 잡아서로. 다 덤비 잡아. 남비 덤바선 덤마르베. 남비 덤바로 로기 덤바다. 두비 덤바 니 마르베. 덤비 잡아. 덤비 잡아. 남비 덤바로 로기 덤바다. 두비 덤바 니. 추고로 농구 추고도 도비 추고니 어떤비 당 최나니데 론도 도비다니 드제셰도 마제도 로바셰고 코나오스 사제게 템바스나 사제게 라이나 사제게 템바 임 차로 그래 도비 템바로 사제랑 초랑 조랑 토랑 고노도 도비 템바레스 도비 템바제
그래
되네 도비 템바 되는 하바송지냐네 사바송냐네 두걸로 도비 템발 하송냐네 사바송냐네 들래 사비 사바송냐네 들래 도비 템발 그랬어 그래
Less
롱게 템바스나 되네송 롱치 되네송 체네다
Less
롱게 템바 제비세
Less
다 예수바도 강가 잘한도 예수바를 바이복이요 말베 바이복
Bible.
바보
Okay.
롱기 템바 있은 저기도.
Less so.
롱기 템바 있어. 또비 쉐르발다 또비 템바 가서 남아다 버자바이나 바보기 된다 냐래 제거로. 어때 쉐르 이슈바게 또비 템바라는 거도.
Okay.
어때를 코지 라고도.
Okay, so now we're going to look at the distinction of teaching, or dharma, the distinction of the teaching itself. Where are we? So what is when we look at the different teachings, we have scriptural truth and realizational truth. So we begin there. So scriptural truth is referring to the teachings, any among the three baskets of pronouncements of Lord Buddha, the Abhidharma basket, the Vinaya basket, and the Sutra basket. Wrong order, sorry. So those three baskets are the pith of the scriptural truth. When we look at realizational truth, we're speaking of paths, the three highest higher trainings, the highest higher training in ethics, concentration, and wisdom. So these are the realizational doctrines. And then we have scriptural turning of the wheel, and we have realization of Dharma also. But if we apply this scriptural truth and realizational truth to, for instance, the Christian tradition, we would say that the scriptural truth would be the Bible. That would be the pronouncements of Jesus, of God, Jesus, etc. That would be the scriptural truth. The realizational truth would be the practices of what the Bible says. So that would be how we would relate scriptural truth and realizational truth to non-Buddhist traditions. So when we're speaking of the teaching, in this specific case, the scriptural truth are the three baskets of the Vinaya, Sutra, and Abhidharma.
What number the little Chenrezig 쉐르바
So when we look at Buddhism and non-Buddhists, we can see there's similarities that in ways that we can compare. And then the Hindu texts, Mambo. So then the Hindu text, the actual text would be the scriptural truth, and the practice of those texts, the implementation of those texts would be the realizational truth for the Hindus. Saj. So we are out of time, and I thank everyone for coming. Everyone listened very well. Thank you so much. Don't forget, Tuesday, it's the first Tuesday of the month, right?
Tuesday, you are. Indeed.
So Tuesday, we have our continuation of the source of all my good. Lama Tsong-kha-pa's foundation of all good qualities. Rinpoche is doing a very in-depth analysis of that very short poem, and he is utilizing the outline of the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, as well as the teacher's lamp to explain it. So it's a very beautiful teaching, and hope to see everybody on Tuesday. And now we will make final dedication prayers.
24th.
What's that? Oh, good. And on the 24th of this month, we have a White Tara initiation. That is at Sunday normal time, correct? At 3 o'clock. So very important for our center's longevity, and as many people as can come, please do. White Tara long life initiation is a very, very powerful permission practice. So, and it gives you permission then to do the actual practices of White Tara. So. Now we'll do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. And again, thank you everybody for coming and for keeping this tradition alive. Because sometime in this world system, there will be no Dharma in the world. And we are here and it's here. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure land. Dedicate whatever virtues I've collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well, that our dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times. I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. Here, surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso, may your samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tuji Rinpoche Gutsi Shapi Denronang Matsu LamRim Chenmo Kanga Chur